Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and welcome to this World Building Wednesday. Yes, for those who do not know, our subject, we take a subject and we talk about it all week long. And on Wednesdays, we like to world build with whatever strange or bizarre subject that we're talking about. And this week, we're talking about the orc uprisings. Now, for context, we're talking about this not just because it's fun to talk about orcs and fantasy and such, but WotC, Wizards of the Coast, has posted an updated policy on diversity and inclusion and bringing up some of the problematic, though problem to a very small minority of people, problematic um, history within the tabletop RPG community, specifically Dungeons and Dragons, concerning orcs. And I thought, hey, you know what? Let's talk about it. But let's talk about this within the context of the gaming community itself. And not even that. Let's go a little deeper. Let's talk about it within the history of the game, within the setting of the game, as if the meta information we're talking about outside the game is happening within the setting of the game. And I thought that would be a really cool way to frame how we're talking about it. Now, for those who don't know, my particular position is I have no problem with people changing how and what they do going forward, but I do have a problem with this idea of deleting the past, retroactively changing information that had been part of something, even if it's problematic. I have a problem with that. Now, I do approve of having a disclaimer or a discussion or something of that nature to say, hey, this product back in 1977 does not reflect our views now. Here's what we think now. Please enjoy, but kind of understand, some kind of blurb like that. It could go deeper, maybe with an article or a prologue or something by luminaries in our industry, which I think might even be better, even from the creators that have created it in the first place. That might be actually kind of cool. I should tell them that. But despite all that, I thought we would, on this World Building Wednesday, design a world and setting with some history to it that both accepts and acknowledges the history of the orcs and the orc hordes and them being savages and essentially the humanoid biological versions of the nameless things that you can kill, and yet bring them into the forefront as we accept them today in 2020. So, but I wanted to start this out by pointing out a couple of comments that were made on this video series, and I think it really encapsulates how I view it, and then I think it really sparks a great idea for us to go forward on this World Building Wednesday. And again, remember, the idea here is to really not to negate what someone else has created before you, but we're like sitting around at the table creating this world. So, this person will know his name. It's MKRAWEC, or Krawick, I guess is the avatar name. But anyway, this person posts the word uprising, because that's in the thumbnail, has some interesting implications. If you're having an uprising, you're trying to free yourself from domination or overthrow rulers. Maybe orcs' bad rep was deliberately spread by humans who used more powerful magic or more advanced technology to drive them off their land or enslave them to exploit their great physical strength. Maybe that horde quotes, massing on the horizon consider themselves liberators, here to drive human invaders out of their homeland. The humans, meanwhile, have sanitized their history enough that no record remains of what they did to earn the orcs' wrath in the first place. And I really like that. I could imagine this idea that currently today, much like much like a lot of young people playing Dungeons and Dragons and other role playing games today, are scratching their heads like, is this orc thing real? Like, I don't get it. I don't see what the controversy is. While there's people, those of us in the fringes, like yelling and screaming and threatening each other, right? And I think the same thing could be done, or would be great to be done in a setting like this, where the young 17-year-old and his sister want to join the Knights Order to go slay the orcs and stuff, and come to find out from their like great uncle or something that, it wasn't for us humans, we drove them from their land and blah blah blah, and then they find out the truth and they're like, wait, what? Like, we used them to push them as a warriors out into the monster lands, and they've been living there ever since, and we've lived in their lands for generations. And of course, as time goes on, most of us, very rarely do we think in this idea that we are a continuation of our past. We are a chain linked by our past and our future. We're pretty selfish people as a society, a global society, and we tend not to think about other people, not to think about people next to us, let alone from our past or in the future. So of course, the young person that wakes up and looks around their world, all they see are, the human lands or the humanoid lands, player races, right? Classic player races: elves, humans, dwarves, maybe a couple of gnomes and halflings thrown in there, and they're looking at it like, oh, those brutal, bloodthirsty people, they need to be eliminated, without having any context as to what happened in the past. Much like how we refer to each other when it comes to, say, war or terrorism or crime or social status and things like that. I mean, in many ways, that's how we operate today. So I could see that, and I love that idea. This like scrubbed, sanitized history that only a few people or remnants exist out there. And what a cool MacGuffin, right? Imagine there are these individuals who basically represent the purity, the epitome of the human society, and yet they've got these like core agents going around, still trying to scrub history away. And a note here, a book there, an old and ancient but living individual that remembers, maybe some of these people were even alive when they set this thing into motion, like something ancient, like elves or even long-lived dwarves or something, and they've set this into motion. And now they themselves might be victims of their own organization, or even through guilt, they're waiting for an assassin to come kill them, because they know, much like Ozymandias from The Watchmen, that they set something into motion that causes and has been causing the deaths of dozens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even to the hundreds of thousands or more. But you can't go backwards now. I think that would be really cool. Like, they're not going after a magic item. They're going after bits and pieces of information that hide a dark legacy or something. Now, someone by the name of Das Eschlenlaub responded to that comment and said, it says, oh, for sure, orcs can be anything, and the stories are just lies to justify the violent destruction of orc societies. Not being pacifists, they'd fight back. As boogeymen, people would definitely blame everything they could on them. Or maybe orcs are woven into the fabric of a tolerant empire. They do a lot of the fighting and the dying, but that's their nature. And so I think maybe making like a I think making this doing this world building and making it complicated on purpose is a great idea, because imagine this would be the most ironically strange but cool big bad for your world building in terms of like the human orc war. Maybe it's in like it's much like Warhammer 40K, right? It's in its like fifth generation. Or this is something that's been going on for a long time. And imagine like the major orc chiefs on one side sitting down with the noble or whatever faction it is that's been keeping the war effort going in the human lands, and they're sitting down agreeing, sitting around across the table or tribal circle or something from each other. Like, you do realize that the humans are like, we need to keep this war going, because if we expose the lie, it'll destroy our society. And then the orc chieftains are like, we agree with you. Um, this is our way of life. What will our people do? This is all we've ever known. We don't know anything about farming and um, uh, artwork and cultivating our culture. And, and they basically shake hands like, then it's agreed that we're going to continue fighting. Like, yeah, I think that makes sense. Two sides going to war with each other who are in perfect agreement and reasonable with each other, which would be that would be a pretty ironic kind of thing. Omen says, I would agree with that. In terms of real world history, each civilization probably viewed other civilizations as monsters of a sort. Oh yeah, the the term barbarian was never really applied to Conan and the fur loincloth and swords and stuff. It was always the term barbarian, whatever your language is, was always referred to the other, right? But anyway, Omen continues on and says, yeah, each civilization probably viewed other civilizations as monsters of a sort. For example, the Japanese thought that European foreigners were some sort of giant or ogre. They were also utterly shocked when they saw an African man and his dark skin. Absolutely. Um, we all fear, I'm sorry, we all have fears of the unknown, right? Whether the unknown is darkness or a deep pit or some kind of animal or fire, the setting of the sun. We have some primal fears. Public speaking is one of them. Is a major fear of people in your top 10, top 20 fears of all time, uh, along with a lot of like spiders, snakes, those kind of things. And that fear of the unknown makes us, being afraid is pretty embarrassing. So instead of being afraid, we love to turn that fear into hate. Destroy the thing that makes me afraid. How dare it make me afraid? Even though it wasn't doing it on purpose. And so we label them as barbarians. So it would be real easy to it's very easy to label orcs as the outsider, the unknown. Don't even talk to them. They're just barbaric hordes and such. And I think doing that would embrace the history, however vile that we may consider it. That this may be the thing, right? The orcs may have a perfectly, at least in their head, perfectly good reason for assaulting all those villages at first when first level characters are out there going out on their first adventure, right? Maybe they live in a place or they've been forced out into a place where there's very few resources. The orcs were told to, or forced off their lands with abundant resources and such, and the humans, heck, you could even claim that the first proto-humanity, before they started to build cities and castles and things, maybe they got a lot of that culture from the orcs in the first place. How to survive, how to make fire, how to read the stars. Maybe that all that came from orcs in the first place, and then through, again, due to fear. I mean, orcs are pretty, comparatively to a human being, orcs are pretty badass, right? Like it might be like a 1 to 5 ratio in general, like 5 humans to 1 orc. And if they're that dangerous, you kind of want to move them off your land. And so maybe the orcs were pushed into a position where they had no recourse but to steal and rob and rape and destroy to get what they want. Especially if a lot of their knowledge was if it was passed on from generation to generation, and they're living members. There's very few of them to pass on that information to the next, especially if they have a very verbal, um, vocal history as opposed to like a written history. I could see that happening, and maybe it's been humanity that's been forced them to keep this like tribal, nomadic style of living. Now, to I could also see the orcs viewing themselves as the good guy, right? Especially if they lived in somewhat harmony with humanity and became like the when the monsters were sweeping the land and they went out to fight the cyclopses and the hill giants and the minotaurs out there in the wild. Maybe they consider themselves to be they like humans living in the human lands. The orcs living in the monster lands might be considered the underdogs of where they live, right? They live in this place with things that dig from underground and fly through the air and poisonous plants and animals and oozes and all these kind of really strange things. And maybe they're like it's become a point of pride that they're even able to live and survive in such a like desolate locations with Medusae and well, I guess you can kind of reframe them as gorgons and ankeg hives and all this other kind of stuff. Yep. Um, yeah, Cameron F says, didn't a lack of desirable farming land um, drove the Norse to send Vikings to raid? I, I, I'm gonna say yeah, right. When you have very little space or you have very little farmland, um, why wouldn't people travel to other places and combine that with this idea of not just a tribal nomadic lifestyle, but um, even if in your proto history that these others, these humans took something from you, pretty reasonable to go ahead and steal their stuff back, right? Like, oh, they've got more, we'll just take their stuff, you know. Uh, I I absolutely positively believe in something like that. Would be a great way to embrace it. But finding out that it would be very I think the cool part of this is the drama that would happen when agents from either side realize that they've been played, basically. That the culture that they've absorbed, that they've built, reframed their history around, was manipulated, or has been continually manipulated to keep this animosity. I mean, how pissed would the orcs be? Like, wait a minute, you mean we could have already moved out of this harsh landscape that we live in, and you guys kept us here? Like, what? Now, of course, over time, much like say prison culture, despite the fact you're in a uh, you're the life around you is so desolate, you want people love their pride. They want to feel that they are important, that they matter, both individually and then as a group, as a faction, as a society. So we build some element of pride, of a way to puff our chest out and feel happy about our condition, no matter how bad that condition is. And much like in prison culture, where there is a part of prison culture where, yeah, I can survive here and I know the ins and outs and I know the economy of living in a prison culture. And, you know, psychologically, we need to do things in at our worst state to keep ourselves alive. And I think orcs would probably be a culture that has done that. Like, no, like if you really ask the orcs, and really, really dig deep. They're like, no, we don't want to live here and fight and see our people die and all this kind of stuff. But then on the other hand, it's like, we are kind of badasses, aren't we? I mean, it, numerically, and I'm talking about statistics, right? Like orcs are at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to all these. When you start flipping through the monster manual, and they're living in a place where they have all these other dangerous things. So much like you know, human tribes gathering together to kill larger things like elephants and rhinoceroses and sailing on ships to kill whales. I could see orcs needing to band together to take down things like dragon turtles and purple worms and giant insects and these other monstrous things, giants of all ilks out there, and of course banding together with say other monsters things out there just to live. Like, hey, of course the orcs are like, of course we're agents of the fire giants, because where else we have no recourse but to be allies with them, um just to have another day of hope, for our people to live. Deadman says, according to the AD&D second edition monster manual, the orcs outnumbered humans around 30-1, but humans with class levels outnumbered the orcs with class levels nearly 5-1. Yeah, I could see that. If in a people that probably live and die pretty quickly and pretty harshly, I'm sure they don't have very much time to engage in a lot of the things that a industrialized society would allow you to do, like studying wizardry and writing books on faith and having music and dance and art and stuff. When your lifespan is numbered in, barely reaches 50 or something, or and even lower, you got to get on it quick. Like, orc teenagers are probably they're given a weapon and they're like, listen, you're gonna have to learn. You either learn or die. And but what happens when those orcs get pulled into our society? And I think that would be cool. I'm gonna give you guys an inciting event in just a minute. So Owen says, I'm also trying to explore that concept of race versus race with my Amazons and pygmies, with the former being physically imposing and warlike, and the latter being psychic in nature, have a strong attachment to nature. Um, I think it would be really cool to see this like blending of the two. Like, I could imagine the human lands, and I'm talking like humans, dwarves, elves, and things. Maybe, just maybe, when the humans go with the orcs, maybe the orcs are the ones that teach the best druidic and ranger like skills. Like, I could imagine them being in the jungle, and the humans, are learning to paint their skin, and they, an orc shaman is teaching the humans about like herbalism and plants and reading the stars and becoming one with nature. Maybe the orcs are so in tune with nature that human society has gotten to the point where they don't have that attachment anymore. And it'd be kind of cool to see like a druidic circle and a player character's like, yeah, I'm a druid, and they get to like name level, like, or they get to like third level, or wherever it is, whatever level it is, where you start to like get that wild shape or something, and then out of the woods come stalking these like orcs or something, and the PCs are like, they're going to attack us, and the druids are like, no, they actually taught us this connection to nature and stuff. And maybe there are orcs that teach the humans like survival skills, like we know how to create a fire, and we don't, we're not making raw weapons because we want to. We actually go out in the wild and forge our own weapons literally out of the dirt and ore that we can find and stuff. Red Dice Diary says, perhaps newly born orcs are born with instincts and acquire survival knowledge rapidly, like some animals. See that? Perhaps the traditional berserking orcs and simple and simple the younger members is simply the younger members who haven't acquired the learned knowledge yet, but are running on raw instinct. So that would be like, it's almost as if we're like socializing um, socializing the instinctual elements of the animal nature, and maybe they're able to harness it a lot better than humanity, because we have instincts too. We just Our mindset is such that we push down those instincts. Like sometimes we'll hear things or say things, or heck, we even have the ability to push past our own instincts to not do things that would kill us, right? But maybe the orcs um, are able to harness that, like almost like harnessing their adrenaline or something. Having a like when the hair stands up on the back of their neck, they know to run, whatever that case may be. And maybe in the social context, it can be a little bit disturbing to have, like, you're sitting down having a meal with the orcs, and all of a sudden two or three of them just stand up and push your shoulders and like run out the door, and everyone's like, what the hell just happened? And then, like, moments later, there's a flash flood or an earthquake, or like monsters break through the castle walls, and they're like, oh wow, they've got like a danger sense or something, or they just instinctively know which plants to eat or not eat to survive, or they can sniff out fresh water when they're lost in the desert or something like that. I really like that a lot, and maybe the orcs have always needed to do that because of their ability to survive in lands where there are things like undead and lycanthropes and giants and aberrant creatures and such. And maybe this is the way they've had to harness it to survive in those lands. That, hey, when before those hordes of zombies and skeletons overtake our tribe, if we don't listen to that nagging, our lizard brain, we'll probably die. Red Dice says, I can imagine humans in the know saying something terrible is coming. The orc tribes have left. Yep. It might be like ancient man used to follow hordes. Sorry, ancient man here used to follow herds, like flocks of birds or buffalo or antelope or something. Maybe there's something similar with orcs, right? Like, hey, when the orcs start migrating, yeah, we need to follow them because there's might be some dangers and such. I really like that a lot. So I'm going to describe to you, and I actually used this before. I'm going to describe to you an inciting event. Um, Here we go. Cameron says, I could still see a realistic culture having developed martial styles. I feel like orc tomahawk fighting would be brutal and beautiful. Oh yeah. They I could see them even being the Shaolin monks of the D&D world, like fighting styles that represent are mimicked after some of the most dangerous predators out there, like the owlbear fighting style, or like the manticore dual fighting style or something. Like take it to take it to the fantasy realm, where it's like, I don't just know mantis style, like I don't know, drunken ogre style or something like that, where they have these martial styles that the humans have been, like, they've kind of like been scrubbing away the names. Yeah, wyvern style. Yep, attacking you from jumping and leaping and attacking you from the high ground, and then all of a sudden they reach behind them and pull out that poison dagger and shoot right in the throat, and slip the dagger right into their sheath and keep on going with their double weapons or something. Yeah, that would be kind of cool. I wonder. I kind of wonder why it has to exist out there, right? With monks, the monk features having like monk styles built on things. Yeah, Cameron's like cougar style, bear style, boule style. Yep, and land shark. That sounds cool. Peter, I'm going to butcher your last name, and I really apologize for that. But Peter Jurgen's like lurking. Yeah, I see you there, or lurking like an orc, right? Anyway, Red Dice says, to be fair, if something has made orcs move, I wouldn't want to face it. Yes. So here's an inciting event that I used. Red Dice Tire says, cougar style? the famed martial art of seducing younger men. Yep, exactly. As a matter of fact, maybe that's the maybe it's been human beings that have spread the thing, like spread it around like a taboo that it hasn't been orcs this entire time, like going about raping humanity to make half orcs. Maybe there's always been this subsect of like, I'm looking at you, Omen. There's been a subsect of like, yeah, we said it was rape, but it really wasn't. But socially, in a social context, we didn't want to admit it. So maybe that's been like this legacy of lies that's been happening all this time, because what noble want to admit that they fell for an orc or something, right? Um, Peter says, "I'll let you know how it's pronounced one day, or how it's pronounced on Discord one day." Thank you very much for that. Because it's a little disrespectful for me not to pronounce it right, but I've got a lazy American tongue, so whatever. Um, Peter says, just like in Orcish, Swedish have sound, English doesn't. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So, but sorry, but of course you're always welcome. Now, an inciting event that I used one time was, imagine like an orc warrior, his body, covered with scars that have calloused over and become keloid, grabbing, pushing this cart or dragging this cart through a human town, comes in with no weapons, but there's a cart and you can smell something terrible from it, covered in tarps and hide. Maybe flies are buzzing around it. Something you don't want to see is underneath the what's covered. And this orc, tired from walking miles and miles, grabbing this cart, a cart normally pulled by massive beasts, pulling this by hand into the human lands. And something about this person walking through into town, um, these people seem to separate. Something about the look of this orc tells them to stand away. And then when they get into town, they are led by the city guard to, I don't know, the Council of Seven or something, because this person has asked for a treaty to speak one-on-one with the Council of Seven to find some way to end the war between the orcs and the humans. And when they get into town, the person says, one person from the Council of Seven addresses this giant battle hardened orc or whatnot, and says, "You have entreated to speak to us, and what do you want?" And this orc's like, "We are tired. We are ravaged. We've there's been too many lives lost. Our young are dying out there from starvation. They're losing their humanity, generation to generation. That's all we're doing. And I want to beseech all of you that instead of fighting, that you accept the orc nation into your community, so that we become the Council of Eight." And everyone goes like, and I say, well, normally with when you entreaty to become, because everyone's thinking this is not going to happen. Like, what gifts do you bring to us to show us that you belong with one of us? And then the orc takes the covers and pulls them back and shows the dead bodies of, pregnant orc women and dead orc babies, and points to them and sees that their bodies have been burned and marked and slashed, and it maybe even runes may even cover their bodies, and and then you find out that they say, yeah, our children, our women were killed by your knights. And this is the kind of things they do to us out there in the wild. You honor them, but they're child murderers or something. And maybe that becomes an inciting event that changes people's perception when when it's away from you. It's like, oh, they're honorable knights. We should be enforcing this and keeping the war going. But to have that, have something, an inciting event where the population gets to see exactly what's going on there, and it's not necessarily clearly black and white, that the Knight's Order, I don't know, of the Silver Flame, that everyone has honored this entire time, to come to find out that they're killing children and defenseless women, would make the population turn on them. And I think that would be a really cool kind of like a flip of where the player characters have to hunt down, let's say, the rogue knights, as opposed to anything else. I see you over there. The cart's full of durians. You leave that alone. I know durians. I've heard them. There are a number of cooking shows where they talk about even some of the people with the widest of palates could not accept eating durian, and that there are, if I'm not mistaken, Omen, aren't there businesses that have signs that have no durian allowed? If I'm not mistaken, I've never smelled durian. I've only seen it in pictures, but yeah. um, Cameron says, in my gaming world, half orcs are all dead, but they made half orcs with epic levels of romance. Imagine orc dancing with flowers in their mouths, and you've got the idea. Yeah, orcs tangoing. Ooh, we don't just tango on the floor; we tango behind the sheets. Oh yeah. Red Dice says, you know, when the orcs approach the council, there's going to be a majorly dude with an English accent who protests, saying, "Oh, orcs in the council? That's the very idea. Oh my goodness, no!" With pinky in the air, gotta be super stereotyped. Teeth firmly shut. AEIOU, and sometimes, yes, absolutely. You gotta have the proverbial, like, look down the nose at the person, chin in the air, like, oh, I can't even bring to get my chin to look at you. Oh, yeah, you got to have that. Yeah, you definitely got to have something like that. And that would be, but to me, I think the like not only just flipping it on its head, but having I think a setting where like humans and orcs are at each other's throats might be a little bit too black and white, but where you have this blending of different sides, like the orcs that want the war to stop, but then there's of course the black talons. I brought them up yesterday, so maybe there's of course the hardened black talons with like they use like a charcoal or like a black ink or something on their hands and their face, and they're like, they're so they've become so um they've doubled down on their culture, right? Like no one no one anywhere wants to be told that their culture no longer matters anymore. It's back during Black History Month in the States. You guys know I did 2 weeks of this of a daily talk, and I talked about like why do people want to live in like ghettos and places of squalor and stuff. And the thing is that nobody wants to live there, but at the same time, as human beings, we also don't want to feel like we are that our culture is somehow insignificant or subhuman, you know. Everybody wants to say, hey, we're sure I live in this, but there's a pride to the survival. And I could imagine like the black talons are the ones that want to keep the war going. And maybe instead of like major wars, maybe they start doing like hit and runs or assassinations or something. And I could imagine that, like Red Dice says, you got to have that majorly dude with the English accent, making a deal with the black talons, letting them into the back door to wreak havoc, to say, see, they're doing something, right? I could see that very much so. Deadman says the Addams family with everyone in orc. Yeah. Now, another thing I think with orcs would be a really to embrace this idea of the past and the present. What if, in a strange way, right, like the orcs, the war that has been going on with the orcs, maybe the orc culture isn't as pissed off as we think they would be. Meaning, like, the humans are like, oh no, like if we let orcs into our society, they're just gonna murder all of us because of what we've done to them. But maybe the orcs in themselves, they don't look at it that way. Maybe they're like, no, we're a warrior culture as well as survival culture. Like, it was neither good nor bad. It just was. Like, be proud that your people died in a fight with us. And we're proud of having an enemy that we thought you guys have been pushovers this whole time, but you've become our you've become the toughest enemy we've ever fought. Of course we're proud of it. And that might be a strange way of thinking about it, but wouldn't it be cool if, like, a human entourage literally went into, like, the real deep orc lands, and come to find out, like, they've been building monuments to some of the greatest human heroes in these battles, because in battle they're like vicious and brutal, but when they go back home, maybe like a stereotypical, like, Japanese culture or something, there's this element of, like, respecting your enemy. I think that'd be awesome as well. And orcs may know the ins and outs of surviving in a world where human beings have no information at all. Like, there might be these enclaves out in the monster lands or something, where each of the orc tribes is able to, like you might have, much like how we have, like, desert orcs and, say, river orcs, and or coastal orcs and jungle orcs or something. Maybe there are also um, orcs. I don't want to say of the undead. Like, they have specialized in their, yeah, club club orcs, right? Like, maybe orcs have specialties. So there are orcs that know how to fight undead. There are orcs who know how to fight harpies. There are orcs who know how to battle giant insects or something. With afros and bell bottoms. I say the bell bottoms. I don't know how many helmets you could put on top of an afro. Although I suppose with the right music, that'd be kind of cool. Little 70s music. Bucka wow, bucka wow wow. Um, Red Dice Diary says, what if the dead orcs have bought a tribe, a tribute to the human victory in battle? Oh, okay. Like, um, so do you mean that in a, like, spiritual way? Oh, you're saying, like, if or the orcs have petitioned human beings to speak to them, and they think, okay, okay. Well, I can see this. I'm going to read this two ways. So, um, in the physical world, it could be that the orcs in the physical world want to talk to the humans, and the humans, of course, are, like, thinking they're going to get double crossed or whatever. But actually, what they're doing is they're giving a tribute to the humans to honor their fierceness in battle, in, like, a political sense. Like, hey, we brought these things to you, like, maybe like herbal concoctions and trinkets that were created by the tribes and things, and we wanted to give these things to you. But what if like, in a spiritual sense, that would be kind of weird but kind of cool, that, like, if you pass on as a human being, especially if you're, like, in a warrior culture, that the first people you see are like orcs in the afterlife, and you're like, why am I seeing orcs? And they're like, we're going to take you to the battle lands. We're going to take you over to, what's the planescape? There's a plane of battle where there's, like, you need, like, Valhalla, where there's nothing but battle over and over again, and then it's filled with orcs, and the humans are, like, scratching their heads, like, what? And they're like, of course we're here. Here's a weapon. Let's go fight forever, and dying and fighting and dying over and over again. Yeah, Red Dice says, instead of saying look what you've done. They're saying, we respect your valor in battle. Here's a tribute to your victory. Okay, I could see that. Um, maybe that's how, in a subtle kind of way, maybe that's how how we've gotten so many half orcs in society. Like, it is Deadman says is Acheron or Acheron. That's the plane where there's an eternal battle going on. In Planescape. I can't remember. Planescape came about during an era. I never owned the books. I knew a friend of mine had them, and we played in Planescape, but I could never remember the the improved names for all the planes, because I remember the old planes of existence in the back of I think it was the back of the Dungeon Master's Guide, or was it the Player's Handbook? They had the map of the planes, and it was like a big wheel, a spiral, and stuff. Yeah, the Infinite Battlefield of Acheron. Oh, it's Acheron. Was an outer plane in the Great Wheel cosmology model representing alignments between lawful evil and lawful neutral. Oh, it was in between them. That's right, because they had the planes in between the central neutral plane and then the 8 cardinal alignments, and then they had planes in between the 8 cardinal parts of the Great Wheel. Which I miss that. I miss the Great Wheel as a descriptor. But Red Dice says, perhaps orcs think that if you kill an enemy, you take a part of their strength. So they offer the recovered dead to the humans as part of the belief because they believe they've earned it. I could see that. I like that. I like that a lot. And so, again, we want to accept the fact that, the orc hordes have been this part of history in the past. Come on, kitty. I know. I'm going to give you head scratchies in a moment. But also accepting the fact that we are changing our mindset in the future. As a matter of fact, I could even see just basically humanity getting tired, and once they get tired of the constant fighting and battles and all this kind of stuff. Maybe once they've gotten tired enough, they actually sit down and listen, and the orcs are like, oh, so the humans are like, we've been attacking them on the roads, but we didn't know you were trying to respect us. We thought you were like supplying, I don't know, supplies to other orc hordes out there. And the orcs are like, no, we were actually bringing back your dead. We weren't eating them. Like, humans are like, oops, sorry. Now I could see to again, to rationalize this idea that, hey, the orcs, we have both very complex, very I air quotes human level society and intelligence, and yet we do have a mindless berserker horde out there. Maybe orcs, like you mentioned before there, Red Dice, like maybe they have because of their ability to embrace their instincts, maybe orcs are proto monsters, right? So you can make up in the setting that orcs who delve too deeply into their instincts and reject their their humanity, I guess you could say, much like much like warlocks having like warlock patrons or clerics worshiping somebody. Like, instead of player character classes, the monster NPC version of orcs is that they become other monsters, so that maybe orcs become like lycanthropes if they are able to dive that deeply into the basis parts of their psychology. Or maybe over time they're able to shed their skin or go into a chrysalis kind of manipulation. Or maybe there's even a ritualized thing where their skin is flayed and they start to transform into other monster or monstrous races out there. Like, maybe an orc becomes an ogre, which then becomes a troll, or something of that nature. Yeah, yeah, yep. Like Orc says, you should check out the orcs of Ironclaw called Gordlings. Ooh, Gordlings, I like that. Who are plant monsters like in 40K. Ooh, yeah, orcs might. Hmm. Yeah, orcs somehow not just reproducing, but like transforming like plants do. Yeah, being plants, they don't experience pain the same way animals do. Of course, some people might balk at the idea, like, well, how do they have sex with human beings? But you're like, yeah, because they do, you know. Um, and of course, we this is a little bit of a strangeism, but I do have a video about the fact of like why aren't there half orc, half halflings, or half orcs, half elves? And my contention is maybe they do exist, or maybe they don't. We just don't call them half orcs. Usually, when it's a human and an orc, we call it half whatever it is, which is like human and elf is half elf, human and orc is half orc. But like a dwarf and a orc, like what does that? Where does that come from? You know? Yeah, yeah, with the K. Like Deadman says, yes, in 40K, it's orcs with a K, not orcs with a C. Which, I mean, what is that? That's just like um the great sage Thor from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. All words are made up. You know. Yeah, Cameron says, why does no one ask why elves and humans can do the horizontal tango? Yeah, yeah. Why are they the only ones? Well, we that's a whole nother thing, right? Like, yeah, Red Dice is probably a Games Workshop copyright dodge. Yep, yep. Omen says Shadowrun too. Shadowrun's got the orcs with the K. Yep. And then of course there are if you do a Wikipedia search on orcs, there's all kinds of like Orokai and Orkinians and things like that. Yeah, Oma says, like I was saying, a species that doesn't understand pain the way we do might seem evil. Yeah, and of course, when you're the other, um, yeah, like to us using a machete to chop off someone's arm is bad. Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, that might be the way that they are able to heal, right? Like to us, we think they're chopping off their arm, but to them, they're like, yeah, you need to chop that arm off so you can regrow it, right? At some period later, you know. He says, yeah, but the plant creatures, it might not be a problem because it'll grow back and doesn't hurt. Yep. In what's the role playing game? Within the Ring of Fire, they have orcs that are plant like. Yep. Yep. The Orukai are the most brutal half orcs. Yeah, because they formed from human beings? Um, which, this is another thing about orcs in terms of like about the breeding and such. I mean, I know some people have had settings where uh orcism is like a disease that you get, where you transform. Orcism could be like a curse that happens that evil people turn um, e- performing evil deeds turns you into these kind of things, creatures and such. Maybe orcism comes about by surviving a disease, but you are forever changed as well. Um, yeah, Red Dice says Orokai were a crossbreed of orcs and men, so they were half orcs. They were the most brutal half orcs. So, guys, I like the complication of. We got about 5 minutes left, so I'm gonna punch out a ton of story seeds so we can end. We can, the last 15 minutes of the show is where the magic happens. So, um, I could see player characters needing to go into the monster lands to bring uh, these knights that have been killing the orc babies, children, and pregnant women to justice. Basically, going after their heroes, and of course, their heroes are like these very powerful, air quotes, 18th level paladins and rangers and stuff. And so the PCs, lowly little first to third level characters, have to go out there and basically take down and bring back their heroes. And while doing so, maybe the player characters are are hated on both sides for doing what they have to do. Right? You're going into the orc lands; they don't like you. The humanity is like, why are you trying to hunt down our heroes? But they've got to be brought to justice. Um, I could imagine a maybe this is far more of a tribal quest. Player characters come from civilized society, and they are the diplomats, and the player characters to forge this alliance with the orc nations. They say, okay, um, to forge an alliance, we need members of humanity to go on a vision quest of sorts. Like, hey, to become a powerful orc, we send our young members, and you have to go through the same trials. So, for example, the player characters might need to travel around the very dangerous orc lands as almost like gathering or going to different elders that are in the orc lands. And if they survive, like if they go into the Bloody Mountains, which might be like a series of highly volcanic regions and stuff, and the player characters go there, defeat some great monsters or something, and then the orc tribe that lives there is like, you deserve this thing, and they give you maybe some kind of they paint your skin or maybe pierce your body or give you tattoos, and that's a representation of gaining some levels, or some like boon, or instead of like magic items or something, you've killed a great beast and they pull out of it like it's bone or something and hand it to you. That bone is like basically like a magic weapon, and you move on to the desert lands and the dark jungle or maybe a swamp. In each location, as the player characters move around, they are slowly being accepted into the orc culture. I could also see player characters being bodyguards for humans going into the orc lands and vice versa, the orcs in the human lands. Thank you, Harry. Uh, Blessings many, woes few. Have a great day. Third delight. Thank you very much, Harry. And thank you very no need for the super chat, but I really appreciate it. Maybe it might get other people to do the same thing. Hint, hint. I'm being stupid. So I really appreciate the cup of coffee. I will endear to have a cup of Joe before I head off to work. Thank you very much for being here, and also thank you very much for not making me be the only gray-haired grognard in the RPG community. Um, yeah, Harry's going to pass on his mantle to me once I get to a certain part. Cameron says, just thought about Groomsh. Do you think Watsy will have orcs that split away from him? I thought about that. Where because Groomsh like is Groomsh as a godling is pretty brutal, kind of like Loth is to the Drow elves. I wonder if or are they going to retcon Groomsh? See, I don't want them to do that. I don't want them to retcon it. I would like a rebellion against Groomsh. Like maybe the Groomsh, for those who don't know, is the god of the goblinoids, basically, god of the orcs and other things. Watsy, Wizards of the Coast, WOTC is Wizards of the Coast, who own Dungeons and Dragons. Yep. Yeah, Cyber Drow. We're the orcs that were the skull you kill. I'll pull on that thread in a minute. Yeah, I mean, there could be many things that are. All right, go ahead, old head. Yeah, I could see like what we're talking about. We're doing this world building. What if Groomsh didn't want them to control them? Didn't want them to reach their full potential, right? Like, Omen's talking about them being plant-like, and we're talking about them being druids and rangers and like being the master of their world. Maybe even Groomsh was pivotal in keeping them down, keeping them savage. And once they broke away from Groomsh, they were able to embrace their full potential. And that might be the opening for a rebellion against Grumsh and others. Uh, Grumsh was an orc god and a greater deity. He was envisioned with one eye by all who named him a god and was a deity mainly worshipped by orcs. For some reason, I think I remember Grumsh getting his eye plucked out, but he's always drawn as like a cyclops. So I'm a little I'm a little confused on that one. I think I'm misremembering something. Yeah, Cameron's like, ooh, I hope they don't change the TSR stuff. Can they? Suddenly horrified. I read it, the policy put out by Wizards of the Coast. Okay, so you know what? How about we not guess at this? Not D&D Beyond. I'm gonna go to Wizards of the Coast. I normally don't like to pull these kind of things up, but oops, that's not where I want to go. That's the that's the corporate page. I want to go to the corporate page and open up my own thing. Um, let's find out. Let's find out what they, because I'm maybe I'm misreading this. Um, all right, so Wizards of the Coast policy, and I'm going to read directly from it. Um, when every quote when every D&D book is reprinted, we have an opportunity to correct errors that we or the broader D&D community discovered in that book. Each year, we use these opportunities to fix a variety of things, including errors in judgment. In recent reprintings of Tomb of Annihilation and Curse of Strahd, for example, we changed text that was racially insensitive. Those reprints have already been printed and will be available in the months ahead. We will continue this process, reviewing each book as it comes up for a reprint and fixing such errors where they are present. And so I guess, okay, how do I say this? If they reprint, like for example, on they have books for available under the Drive Through RPG version, the Guild, right? The and if you buy a book that's a PDF or print on demand, does that count as a reprinting or not? I'm not certain. Now, if it means that going forward they're going to change things going forward, I don't have a problem with that. They're a company; they can do whatever they want, right? Um, but I wouldn't want them to go back in time. I'm with you, Cameron. I don't want them to go back in time and change the past. Now, if they say, "Hey, we're going to add this 1 or 2 page document stating our present position because the stuff that we have in our old games is problematic," I honestly don't have a problem with that. Put a disclaimer in front of something, right? I mean, people, we have warning labels and disclaimers in front of a whole bunch of things, including television shows and music and things like that. Just don't change it, right? It's like if I want to listen to unedited music, let me listen to it, but slap a label on the front, right? I'm fine with that, but let me know. Cameron says, "I hope they keep the originals available. I studied this game, and mind you, also remember, like those of us that want to go back and see the old stuff. Could you imagine it not jiving with the like? Hey, here's my old player's handbook. Wait, did they change the information in my player's handbook? Like, I don't. I hope they don't do that. I hope they keep it the way it is. Put a disclaimer up front if you have to. Put a warning label or something. Hey, here's a Kenneth Haidt or one of the Gygax's kids or some, Robin Laws or a bunch of these other creators, put out a, 250 word, here's what we were thinking, here's how we think now. I'm with that part of it, but yeah, I don't know about the rest of it. Orcs that were the skull you kill in campaign. I'm not following that cyber drow, but maybe tomorrow. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for joining me in this in these talks and such, and on this World Building Wednesday. I mean, there's this. I think I'm a glass half full kind of person, and I feel like there's great opportunity to tell some great stories without deleting the past history. And I hope that's not what they're doing. But I hope going forward, we embrace the idea of like, you know what, we were wrong, and now let's take a step forward into this embrace. I mean, we've already done this with the other monster races, and nobody's got a problem with that, right? But a very vocal, although very small minority of people are using it as in a role-playing community, or using it as a platform to bring up racial stereotypes. And mind you, it does come from racial stereotyping, but yeah, isn't it E. Gary Gygax? I think it's E. Gary Gygax. As a matter of fact, it was pointed out to me that in a map in the module Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, and I complained about like, why are these random walls and bricks and stuff in this starship? Someone had to point out to me that it spells egg on the map. I was like, oh, duh. Sorry, Cyber Drow. Dave Arneson. Yep. Dave Arneson, and is it like Ernest Gary Gygax? Something like that. A world where orcs that are all that on USR Muscle, Battle Axe, and Mac. Sorry, Cyber Drow. If you're maybe you're it's not coming across very well from the translator, which is fine. But we'll clear it up. Anyway, we're past our hour mark, so I really have got to go. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate you guys being here. Thank you, Harry, for the super chat. I could use a cup of coffee because I got to wake up after this. But anyway, guys, thank you very much. Have a great one. We have to go out with a little bit of music, don't we? Let's get out. Let's bring this one out of here, guys. Anyway, for those who don't know, I am a contributing writer to Critical Hit Publishing, as stated here and there. Please like, share, subscribe, join in the fun over on Twitch, YouTube, and our Discord server, because we broadcast simultaneously on all three platforms. And as we gain more and more people, just be aware that maybe, just maybe, your comment might be the highlight of our show. Thank you very much for joining me. I am DBJ. Have a great one. I'm your dreaded DM. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching.